Good morning, Norma here. I just want to begin by showing you this beautiful red maple out in front of my house. In another few days, it's going to be all that brilliant red color, and it just looks like it's on fire. Such a glorious thing to watch. So today's gospel is Luke chapter 9, the story of the Transfiguration. Now, in previous verses, Jesus tries to forewarn his disciples that he will be betrayed, suffer, and be killed, but on the third day he would be raised. Now, if that isn't enough to wrap their heads around, Jesus also tells them that if you want to be my follower, you must first deny yourself, take up your cross daily, and follow me. Now, we pick up with today's reading, beginning at verse 28. Now, about 8 days later after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up on a mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. And suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who had stood with him. And just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." And while he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. And then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. This is the gospel of Christ. Now Jesus takes Peter, James, and John up on a mountain to pray. And as Jesus prayed, his face was changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Now the word transfigured literally means the change of one's appearance. Well, suddenly Moses and Elijah appear and begin talking to Jesus about his departure that would happen in Jerusalem. Now it is thought that these two men represent the law and the prophets, tying the threads from the past and present neatly together, outlining God's plan to heal and restore a broken humanity. Well, completely missing the point, Peter suggests that they build some kind of monument to mark this event. See, he was so enwrapped in the experience that he failed to see its significance. A cloud overshadowed them, and they were afraid. And God affirms that this is my son, my chosen. Listen to him. And later in the chapter, Jesus once again tells his disciples to pay attention and let these words sink in. Now, these disciples were shown all this to strengthen their faith so they could face the difficult days ahead, Jesus' arrest and crucifixion, and then to equip them to carry on the work that Jesus had begun. Now, even though Jesus would face suffering and death, God would be glorified. Jesus would be victorious over the darkness of this world. But sadly, they still didn't understand, and were too afraid to ask Jesus about it. Well, what does this story have to teach us today? Well, I think the first thing is that Jesus constantly shows us new aspects of his divine nature. Now, it may not be as dazzling as this encounter, but something simple every day. Maybe through the action of a stranger or a word from a friend, we begin to see God in a new light. And then we begin to see the world and those around us in a new way. At some point, we all need to choose if we want to be a follower of Christ. You know, it's comfortable sitting on the fence of non-involvement. We don't face criticism. We can avoid conflict. But apathy is not living. Following Christ's example can be uncomfortable and certainly challenging at times. But it's the only way to step into the abundant joy that God promises. As we spend time with him, we will become transformed. We become less focused on ourselves and more on doing his will. We can respond from a place of love and forgiveness. Please pray with me. Gracious God, We ask that our fears and doubts do not overshadow the radiance of who you are. Like Peter, James, and John, we too need constantly be reminded of your love. Shine the light of your presence on us. May we see you more clearly and respond with boldness, confident that even death cannot win. Help us to carry your light into the world. Amen. Well, thank you for being with me this morning. Enjoy those beautiful fall colors, and I will see you in a few weeks. God bless.